We're live.
Hey!
I think it worked. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
I forgot to hit live button, and then I hit it last minute. So I hope everyone saw the my favorite countdown. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Zembruski with Hospiamo. That's my brother. Matt Zembruski with Agile Game Changers, and that's my other brother, Mark Alvarez from Rains Company. In the hotel and hospitality industry, coming to us from South Florida. I'm coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, and my bro's up there in the Boston, Massachusetts area. Welcome, you guys. Mark, thank you for coming and visiting with us. This is, here's this nice big picture of you here with your pearly whites. I'm going to go to the original here. So, last week we did what we called episode number 8, the uncomfortable episode. And it actually became very comfortable very quickly because we were talking about the words that we use to describe people and groups and individuals. But it was a bit off topic as far as the purpose of, why we started this podcast or live event series through LinkedIn Live. Because really what we are focused on doing is recognizing the people and the companies and individuals that create things, that commit to doing things and have mechanisms and programs that they create in order to make an impact. And we call them people who move. And so, Mark, you've been on my mind. We've worked together. We know each other. We have trust. And a very strong relationship. And I have always found you to be a person that moves. And I think that once we get into the conversation here, people are going to think like, wow, that dude moves, but he could probably move a mountain, with your life and your career, and the things that you do and the influence that you have with your company. So we are going to get into that. I will say, if you're listening here or watching on LinkedIn Live or on YouTube Live or on Facebook Live or on Twitter Live, we are streaming to all of those lovely platforms. This has become a very fun and favorite thing to do every week. I get to see my bro, and we work and prepare. It's I think we're doing a pretty good job. We went into this. Bro, we went into this saying that we were going to do this 10 times, right? And this is episode number 9. And we went into this saying that we wanted to do 2 things. We wanted to be consistent and we wanted to get a little bit better every week. And I think that we've been doing that, right? So,
Right.
yeah, unless you want to, I don't feel like stopping at episode 10 next week. So I think we're going to keep on going.
We're just getting warmed up.
We're just getting warmed up. Nice. Okay.
On the way to episode 1,000. Like we're going to be competing with Joe Rogan and all these big podcasters.
That's right. Bring it on, Big Joe Rogan. To all of our millions and billions of viewers out there today. If you're watching here on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can make a comment and we get to see the comments. And we'll pop them up here if you have questions. And if you know me and you have my cell phone number and you've been on this live event series before, you know that you can text me to say, hey, I got something to say. And I can text you the special private speakeasy link. And I'll just invite you into the studio and you can ask your question in person. And so, so Mark, you're in South Florida. You and I got to know each other before, during, and after COVID, the pandemic. And you're an example of somebody that I met and worked with during that very difficult time, and still difficult time. But I always cherished our relationship because we forged a significant amount of trust with each other in like the hardest of times. And for our industry, tons of changing. I mean, unfortunately, had to go through layoffs, and you and I were initially talking on the phone, maybe once every couple weeks. But then when that hit, we were on there a couple times a week and reforecasting, just it was everything became more frequent. And I think we can look back on that and say, like, hey, you know what? That was a good thing. And we actually built a friendship here. And I think that has happened throughout our industry. And I think it's just beautiful. I think there's a lot of friendships that I have and still have to this day from 9/11, from the recession, and when adversity strikes, when you can lean on somebody, it's a beautiful thing. So I've leaned on you, and thanks for being a good friend.
Oh, I'm happy to be a part of your world, Adam. I truly am. It's an honor to know you. It's an honor to work with you. We definitely went through some growing pains and some lessons to be learned during the pandemic, if you would. And it was an honor to work with you through that time. It was definitely a learning experience for all of us.
It sure was, and we're going to talk through some of those. One thing that I've learned, I've learned a lot over the past probably year and a half, and it has to do with some research that I've been doing with Hospiamo, and it has to do with just hospitality engagement. The big numbers are 60,000 hotels. We'll just focus on hotels for a moment. 60,000 hotels in the United States. And at the time, during before the pandemic, about 2 million workers. And then that was reduced down to about 500,000 workers. And now we're back up to about 1.5 million workers. But the revenues and the occupancies and the rates are actually over from what we were in 2019. So, doing more with much less. There are some positives in there. The average wage has, increased. I think that was something that was a long time coming. But really, at the end of the day, we are still hurting in the industry. And so the topic of engagement, of what that means for our industry, I spent some time learning about that and what that means, not only to me, but what it means to the world and what it means to, for example, a hotel general manager. You in your role, Mark, you have grown from. I know that you had much experience before becoming a hotel manager and a hotel general manager, but you have risen through the ranks and become a regional director with your own region of hotels to have GMs report to you. And now you are the senior vice president of people and culture with Rains Company. And we are going to talk about engagement, particularly one. I think it might be the hardest thing to do in our industry, which is to be located in one place, you in South Florida, and to fully engage a team of leaders that are spread out across, you said, what, 6 or 7 states
Six
around
states.
the South, 6 states. It's very difficult. It's a high degree of difficulty to do, and it takes a very special company. And we're going to talk about that, right? So we're going to talk about how things come from a company, but also how you engage your team, and the fact that I just love your title of people and culture. We're going to talk about what that means to you and your team. So, all right. So, but first, during that research, I'm gonna go through something fairly quick. And Matt and Mark, whatever questions that you have, let's just keep the dialogue open.
Sure.
Um, and stop me, because I can go on and on sometimes. And so, this was part of the study that over the past year that I, along with some friends, did. Zippia was where we got some data from. Here's Hospiamo. One of our strategic partners is Chuck Cooper with Whitewater Consulting in the human resources world. And so he helped out with that. And so the hypothesis, I guess, was what is engagement and what does it matter to specifically the hotel industry as far as a general manager is concerned? And so here's the scope for perspective: 60,000 hotels. There's 660,000 restaurants. For what the U.S. Census would call the accommodations and food service sector, that exists. That has 23 million workers today, and the compounded average growth rate over the past 5 years is 9%. and it's projected to be 10% every single year for the next 10 years, the fastest growing in the nation. And we're already down over 500,000 people. So we got some work to do. And so the topic of engagement is not going away. And so what we found, I'll say with a very small sample, was a standardized questions that we asked 150 general managers. It was over about a 10 or 11 month period. And we asked them the same questions. And in the world of engagement, to answer that question about what engagement is, and I'll come from an educational perspective here for a minute, Zippia and Gallup, these major surveys and polls for employee studies, they put it in three buckets, right? You're either engaged, you're disengaged, or you're actively disengaged. And the disengaged is the person going through the motions, right? The actively disengaged is not only going through the motions and staying employed, but you're actively eroding the engaged. And so it's a significant issue there. So nationwide in all industries, Zippia study had the engaged of 32%. Now, in our world, Mark, in hotels, you and I have done a lot of recruiting in the past. We're trying to talk to people that we find to be influential or good managers and good leaders to say, hey, come work for me. Are you interested in talking about a job? So I would put the engaged in the bucket of when I call someone to say, hey, listen, stayed at your hotel recently and I really enjoyed it. Seems like you got a great team. We're opening up a hotel across the street. If you're ever interested in interviewing or finding out more about our company, please let me know. The engaged are the ones that say, no, I'm good.
Right.
No, let me know if you need any help, but I'm really good here. The disengaged are the ones that say, send me some information about your company. I'd be happy to look into that. The actively disengaged are the ones like, when's the interview? Can I talk now? Can you hire me now?
Right.
And
let me step out of my office. Let me get some private time right now.
Yeah. Call me 24/7, right? Yeah.
Right.
Another way to say it is, and I had a general manager back in my Orlando days when I was a guest service manager, and he said that what he knows that what he would like is that all employees at the hotel were thinking about their job about 80 or 85% of the time. And he knows that the other 10 or 15% of the time, they're thinking about their own personal financial situation. And I never forgot that. It was like 25 years ago. Their own personal financial situation. So they're thinking about their next paycheck. They're thinking about what they're doing on their next vacation. Do they have enough saved up? And things like that. They're thinking about their job security, their income security, their food security, and things like that. So a disengaged and actively disengaged organization, it's flipped.
Right.
So 80% of the time, they're not thinking about their job and engaging with the guests or team members or thinking out of the box to think like, hey, can I get creative here to create a new solution or something like that? They're thinking about their own personal financial situation, which we all do. We all should, and we always will. But the percentage of the time that you're thinking about that at the job determines that. So the 150 general managers that we spoke with, what we determined was that 7.3% of them were engaged. 67% were very low.
Yeah.
Actively disengaged was 25%. So compare that to the 32, 49, and 17. This was 7.3, 67, and 25. Now, we went a little bit further and we started asking them questions like, why are you loyal or why are you engaged? And also, if you're not engaged, one of the questions was, if you are in these buckets here of disengaged or actively disengaged, what are some of the things that your company could offer that would make you engaged? And the top two, 94% of them said better job and income security keeps me loyal, meaning I'm not thinking where my next paycheck's coming from. I think I'm good at least for the next month or a couple months. and 97.3, so 146 individuals out of 150 said, if I had any type of ownership or profit sharing program, I would move from disengaged to engaged, or maybe actively disengaged to at least engaged, to disengaged. So I found that fascinating. Do you guys have any comments?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
You go first, Mark. Then I'll go.
Well, I was going to say, one of the many hats, as we all wear in hospitality, that I wear is I'm an adjunct professor at Miami-Dade College. They have an excellent hospitality program. They have a 2 and 4 year degree program, which is amazing. And I've been very fortunate to be able to work as an adjunct to be teaching Introduction to Hospitality. One of the things that I express to my students at the very beginning of the class is, if you don't have your homework completed, and I'm not talking about homework in the sense of schoolwork, I'm talking about homework in the sense of your finances, homework in the sense of everything at home is good, you cannot actively work in this business successfully. You cannot travel, right? And I tell them, if you're going to travel for 2 weeks or a week or a month or even longer, right? Think of some of these task force positions, some of these roles that people take before they relocate, et cetera. If you cannot leave without worry, right? You're taking that worry with you. So that disengagement, that actively disengaged person, becomes elevated because you're constantly thinking about, oh my God, I didn't leave enough money for my partner, or I forgot to pay the bill, and now they're going to possibly shut off the electricity and I'm not there. I couldn't get the grass cut in time. Even little things like that, that if you're really worried about those things, you cannot be 100% engaged or 85% engaged, right, in your workplace. So I think it's really important that our audience and people understand in general that you got to take care of your homework first in order for you to be successful at your work.
I like that homework. Matt, what do you think about that?
I completely agree. And I think what's interesting about this dynamic with me as your brother, is that I'm outside the hospitality industry, right? I'm in other parts of technology and agile and other parts of the world. So I can offer a more outsider's perspective. You and Mark are deep in the industry, right? And I'll just say from a pure I don't know, scientific method point of view or whatever, just looking at this, it's great that you went a lot further to go into the why, because it's one thing to have like USA Today, like numbers like yes and no, and you see percentages or whatever. But when you cut beneath it, that's when you get to the real action and what the real valid data, the actionable data. What I think is fascinating is that the way you ask those questions, I don't know how many questions you asked to get to those 4, but to get to those last 2 that are circled there, that's a phenomenal response from that number of, and I think anything over 100 people is statistically significant enough to start to draw some conclusions. Mm-hmm. And you had 150 people here. Those are 94% and 97+% for those 2 items. I mean, so I'm curious, have other companies and people in the industry asked those questions before? Or were you like the first one? They're like, boom, you hit it on the head, and no one's asked me before.
No, so at our organization, we do a biannual survey, and we partner with another company to be able to ask these questions. It's all anonymous, and we just get the feedback. So we just get the data. And if anybody who does make comments, it's anonymous, so we wouldn't be able to pinpoint it, and we wouldn't want to, right? We want people to be able to say what they feel and answer truthfully, because that gives us a good metric of where we're at. And one of the metrics is exactly what Adam's been talking about: engage, disengage, and actively disengage. And we actually utilize that tool to rate where we are as an organization general, just like this does, and also kind of a little bit of a competitive nature that we have with our general managers at our property levels to show, hey, some GMs have a higher engagement level with their teams. What are they doing? Let's talk about it. Let's share best practices so that, hopefully we can spread that culture a little bit from one property to the next. But it's a great tool. It does help us really understand, where we have some areas of opportunity.
Have you asked like the owner ESOP point? Like, is that asked every year, Mark? Like when you're doing this, or is this just more unique to this
twice
study?
a year? Yeah.
So twice a year you're getting numbers on all these points. So this is
Correct.
So all right. Again, curious if we step back. So how many decision makers or companies or whatever in the hospitality industry typically ask that question, get probably somewhat similar results, and then don't act on it? Do they not act on it because
Too many. Yeah.
So it's a systemic challenge of, obviously it's a big elephant in the room. They're like, oh, the elephant's too big, we can't go there. We're going to go after the littler guy, the smaller guys, because at least we can make some progress there and whatever. But that obviously 94, 97%, that's a big deal. Like from a technology or an IT company perspective, if they saw something like that, they would say, okay, let's lean into the big one. What do we got to do to improve on the big one? And that's going to like really move the needle for us with engagement and so forth. Whereas it seems like here in the industry for the last, I'm taking a guess, for the last decade or two or more, that's probably been an important item, a very high item for employee engagement, yet there hasn't been any systemic change happen in the industry.
You know why, Matt? It's an issue that people don't think translates to the bottom line, but it absolutely does. And there's starting to be a little bit more studies that are coming out, and there's a lot more discussion that's happening in our industry as far as, great team members lead to great results, and great results in a P&L are in the middle of the page, right? You can have a fantastic top line revenue number, but if you're not performing well, your bottom line is not going to be very good. It's not going to be positive. So in the middle there is where your labor is, right? And if you have a solid engaged team, they're going to do better. They're going to perform better. They're going to be more efficient. They're going to satisfy the guests more, and in turn that generates more revenue, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a domino effect that a lot of people have just ignored over the years. And I believe primarily it's just, they don't want to pour money into programs. They just want to, pay somebody a wage and walk away, because that's what's happened in our industry forever, right? If you just look at restaurants and you look at hotels in general, you hire somebody, you pay them their hourly wage, they leave, and that's it. They come back the next day. But when you start including benefits and you start including programs that give back to team members, their loyalty is something that starts to show through. And if you have a team member that's there for more than a year, that returning guest that comes back once a year, twice a year, is going to remember that person possibly, or say, hey, it's good to see you again. And those are the things that start showcasing into results, right? That it translates into guest service scores, it translates into bottom line. And I just don't think a lot of, or enough, I shouldn't say a lot, I don't think enough hotel ownership groups and owners are really paying attention to these numbers.
Bro, I'll respond. So, that I can go deep into wormholes as it relates to research and things like that. And so Matt knows this, Mark, but I started this general engagement study back in 2016. Not this particular one, but the question was actually had to do with LinkedIn. And I looked up every hotel management company, every that had a LinkedIn page. Okay, well, I think there was like 140 of them. And I did this myself.
Bro.
Oh man, I did this myself. I counted. The question was, one, I knew how good it felt to be recognized on LinkedIn professionally as a hotel general manager. I knew it because I was recognized a couple times, and my picture's on there, and it said, "Hey, just wanted to say, Adam Zimbrewski did a great job at his hotel and blah blah blah." It felt so good, and so in 2016. I was wondering how often is that done, because I started to notice things. I said, I don't really see that a lot. So the study, and I can publish it again. It's on LinkedIn for anyone to take a look at. It's called the Digital Engagement Hotel Management Companies Using LinkedIn. And I will mention the name because I found that there was one company heads and shoulders above all else, recognizing people at the property level. Okay. Not like rah, rah, here's our company and how great we are, but it was specifically with general managers, directors of sales, housekeepers, front desk agent, and it was White Lodging. I know that you're aware of that company, Mark. Bruce White and his company. He is a legend in the business, and one of the first, Marriott franchisees back in the day. And so, and there was no second place. There was like second place was like if they had 40, which is not a lot, but they still had 40, I think, posts on LinkedIn about the people at the property level. And the next one had like 7, right? And so I did like an impact study to say, hey, what are those 40 people doing? Are they still with the company, kind of a thing? So a lot of this started with that, Matt. And so it also, so in my role in the history, for about, I've been above property, as we shouldn't call it that anymore, but I left the general manager role for a regional director role in 2007. And there's no other role that I cherished or loved more than being a hotel manager or a general manager or a front desk manager at the property every day, working with my team. And I started to get a little depressed, to be honest. I had and that around the time that I got married and started to have kids. And I said, wow, how do I do this job? I'm located here in New Jersey, and I got my hotels from Florida all the way up to New York. How do I do this and still stay married? How do I stay engaged with my wife and my kids? And even if I might have to travel, that's when I really started to change my view. And we weren't even calling it engagement back then, but I can name probably over 20 of those hotel general managers that I am still in touch with today, because we went through the recession together. And we're still very close, just like my friendship with Mark that was forged during the pandemic. That's where this way of thinking started to come up. And so I will say this, based on the findings here, and this is one page of about 80 pages of this study, right? Based on the findings, asking the questions is almost like 100%. If a hotel, 60,000 hotels in the U.S., most of them have some sort of brand attached and a license, like Marriott and Hilton. There's a lot of independent hotels that are not attached, but most of the brands are actually require you as a franchisee to at least once a year have an associate or team member opinion survey. And there are companies that can do that outsourced. And so the asking of these questions is quite popular, because they have to do it. I mean, in the digital world, it's usually done on a computer or on a phone even, and that's okay, and they ask you to do it once a year. So it is required for most of the hotels to at least ask your could be one hotel, it could be 150 hotels, or it could be 1,700 hotels like some management companies have today. And at least you do it once a year. What happens after that, there's no standard, there's no requirement for these companies to do anything with that information. I'm not saying that they don't, but what Mark just stated, this is the reason why I'm still friends with Mark and his company, Raines, and his supervisors and the company owners who I know and respect. They do something with that information, right? So they are holding themselves accountable to doing something with that. And so I'll move on here, but the one example is, it's actually back at that same hotel that I was working at in Orlando. We did the employee satisfaction survey, and I put in there that I saw, and it was anonymous, and I put in the comments that I saw, there's a new book out there called Fish. And I don't know if you guys remember the Fish training, the Fish with the exclamation point.
You and I went there, bro. We went there.
Yes,
Remember?
exactly. Yep, we went there. Yep.
Visited.
And we went there because it was, yeah, anyways, this is in the late 90s. And I said, I wrote on there anonymously that there's this new book out there called Fish Training. And it was all based on the Seattle market where they threw fish to each other and they had fun. It was like, have fun at work. You can have fun at work. And I said, there's a new fish training out there, and I would love to see if we can do something like that for our team. It was like the next week that there was like a memo that came out from corporate. This is with Interstate Hotels, back when they were based in Pittsburgh, when they had about 100 or so hotels. And the memo came out from there to the general manager, and they said, we received some feedback about this training, and we're going to do it. We're going to schedule it for next month. And then these professionals from their team, employees from Interstate, from Pittsburgh, that were employed in the human resources department, that were trainers full time. I'm saying that with sarcasm because most of those jobs are gone, right? Yeah. So they don't exist anymore. So they were able to implement that. And then within the next month, it was like the best training that I ever attended. So much that 6-7 years later, Matt, I was like, man, we're going to be in Seattle. We have to go visit the fish market, And so it was a very impactful thing. So how that made me feel was like, wow, they're listening. Like they actually read this survey and said, that's a good idea. Let's do it. So I'll tell you that I still remember that. And I that's why I mentioned the name Interstate. They're no longer Interstate. But that culture, that was 25 years ago. And a lot has changed in the franchising world. Back then, Marriott and Hilton, two wonderful employers in hospitality, still are today. They were managing a really good percentage of the hotels at the property level. So the people that worked at the property level were actually employed by Marriott, who invented the service profit chain, essentially, right? Take good care of your team members. They'll take care of the guests will return. The profits will come in line. But over the last 25 years, this study, part of the 80-page study that I did, Matt, was all about busting through and breaking up and dismantling, deconstructing the profit and loss statement for thousands of hotels. And what we came up with, the fact that it absolutely matters. So these numbers, and I mean, it's off the charts how expensive it is for companies that don't engage their employees and especially their managers at the property. So it's out there.
I studied the broader industry, bro, across like hospitality, across all industries. And the number one, and you can probably get statistics on this, but the number one expense for companies is attracting and retaining talent. So the fact that, and this is exactly what you and Mark are talking about, is like with a lack of engagement, right? People want to leave, right? And Mark, you were saying it's tough to put an ROI on this, right? It's tough to do that. I think we can do it though. And I know with the right numbers and stuff, you can do it. But what I want to validate to what you both just said is that it's not just hospitality that struggles with this. It's a bigger issue for hospitality because you're so understaffed right now and there's so much growth potential. So it's even stronger. You want to make it attractive for all these new workers to come in, and then you want to make it very sticky, very high engagement, very loyal, right? You want to increase the attractiveness and the loyalty factor, which engagement plays in there, right, as a big role. So my point is, this is a big deal for non-hospitality veterans like me and others who might be watching this. This is a big deal across the industry, but it's an even bigger deal for hospitality. It's a big problem to solve. This is worth literally trillions of dollars. If you do the math, I think the math I did for the US was $2 trillion a year is lost by the collective corporate environment due to losing talent. Basically, when people leave, it costs money to hire new people, to onboard them, to train. All that stuff, every time people leave, like the lack of engagement, the lack of loyalty is very, very expensive. These aren't just numbers on a page. This is like, it's company changing. If you can have a company that's 50% more loyal, more engaged than most of the industry, they're going to be more profitable, right?
You know, is that because you're trying to get a segue into this next pot? You didn't.
I wish I could say that was fully planned, but this is just from the heart. I just wanted to share that. So go ahead, you go.
I'll just highlight a couple companies here, and they have nothing to do with this live event, other than the fact that I know their companies and I've visited and have met with some of these people. So I'm not promoting them at all, other than to say they are pretty amazing for this one particular reason. So I have visited this hotel in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's the Proximity Hotel. Please look it up. They are they were the first Platinum LEED certified hotel in, I think, the Southeast. One of the first in the entire United States by the United States Green Building Council, meaning all of their chairs are made from, their covers are made from like recycled tires. They're flooring. This is back when not everybody was trying to kind of say that they're doing that. But it is a wonderfully sustainable and energy efficient property. I visited. It's wonderful. I mean, it's great. But the reason why I visited was during this study that we were doing. What I found was that I'm going to get to these numbers. There's 5,764 privately held employee-owned companies. So employee stock ownership plans. That's not a lot, okay? And
that's not hospitality. This is everywhere.
Everywhere in the United States. In the United States, yep. This is as of, I think, last year. So look at this. 1% are accommodations and food services, meaning 1% of these companies. So there's 57, essentially, accommodations and food service companies that are employee owned or have any. This is not 100% employee owned. They can have 50% or something like that. Any kind of employee ownership plan. There is one of the largest with 23 million workers, employers, is the absolute bottom of employee ownership. Okay. So that was part of the study. That was something that we found. And that's why we started to ask questions like this, right? Would it matter? And so I'll go back over here. So I wanted to talk to some people, and I visited, and regarding the profitability and regarding the revenue growth of, like, does this matter to guests and travelers, right? Do they care? So here's a comment that was on the Proximity Hotel website that they posted on there from Carl Hedinger. I'm always like kind of sensitive. I want to make sure that people get their own credit. So from NC Tripping in 2019. So I'll skip over, but they said it was amazing. I can't put my finger on it. So until I get this awesome place out of my head, you should know about why we'll be staying there again. And then they continue, it's employee owned. Personally, I wanted to know about Proximity's employee ESOP from the get-go. Owners Dennis Quaintance and Nancy King Quaintance remained the faces of the hotel, but in 2017, they transferred ownership to employees via an ESOP trust. Now, I stayed there, asked a couple questions. They didn't know who I was. The service was fine. It wasn't like I was blown away. My hair wasn't blown back, but it was good. It was decent. And but I would ask questions like, how long have you worked here? And they were talking in years with the company. They also have another hotel that I think is employee owned. I'm sorry, I forget the name. And they have a couple restaurants in the area. And so they were talking like, well, I started as a server at the restaurant, and then I was a front desk agent, and now I'm a manager, and I moved over here. And so one of them left for college, came back, got a certification with them that they paid for, right? So all these stories I started to hear about what that is. And so what I learned, I didn't know really that much about employee stock ownership until a friend of mine from Choate Construction told me about what they did in 2016, I think. So Choate is a very popular and very busy construction company that's based in the Southeast. And again, they they don't know that I'm talking about them on this. I'm going to let them know that I mentioned them, but I have tons of respect for Choate. They converted to an ESOP or employee ownership, and I think it's 2016. And the reason why I bring that up, they don't only specialize in hotels. They do everything from, you know, land development all the way up to, you know, huge office buildings and shopping plazas. And Dave Priester's the founder and CEO. And he, along with his partners, another gentleman that works there is Scott Harris, who's been a somewhat of a mentor of mine. He's a very good person. So the now, my opinion, okay, in the hotel industry, I've been working on some new developments with hotels, and so I deal with a lot of construction groups, renovations. And there is a general sense, definitely since COVID, but even before COVID and the pandemic, that it's very difficult to, people are always complaining and challenged with construction costs and construction timelines, the supply chain and things like that. And so companies like Choate and companies probably like Rain's company, like that Mark represents, I know several others. They definitely are affected, but they're not thrown into the basement and possibly go out of business because of a pandemic, because this particular reason is because they chose to do this before it happened. And so I still see a lot of Choate signs out there in the Southeast. That means they're getting work, they're getting jobs, they're employing people in the construction industry. And if you go back to this, they were one of the leaders. Sorry, here, look at construction at 15%. During this research, construction was like somewhere down here like 15 years ago, and now it's up here at 15%. And so, I would, and a hypothesis to go deeper into that would be like, are the ones that are employee owned or have some sort of portion or even profit sharing plan for their team members and workers? Are they hurting as much with hitting budgets and hitting timelines and getting contracts than others? I would say no. I don't think that they're having as much trouble. So, do you guys? Hey, LinkedIn user says you love this. I love positive feedback on this.
It just means someone's not logged in, so it shows up like that. That happens.
Yeah, log in, LinkedIn user.
We have a fan.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, Adam, I
tell me what you think, Mark.
Talk a little bit about what we did during COVID and also just in general. So at our corporate level, you know, during COVID, obviously we know that a lot of jobs were displaced. Just it happened right across many industries. Our industry was, you know, devastated. One of the things that our partners did in the former company that we worked for, which was HP Hotels, is they were very clear with us, and they said, look, it's going to be very tight. We're going to, you know, freeze certain things in pay and benefits, but we're also not going to take any money. And we want to make sure that you guys get paid. And that was a big thing, right? Wow. The principals of the company said, we are not going to take any money. We're not going to get paid. And, you know, that's on us. We want you guys to get paid first. And we will be able, by doing this and by eliminating some of the plans and benefits that we have in place, we will be able to sustain payroll for X amount of time. If you're okay with lasting through that X amount of time, we'll figure out what's the next step. And this was before, you know, the PPP funding and all that stuff was even put in place. So, you know, the fact that they said, we put you first was paramount. But they also came back and they had said, even afterwards, they said, you know, we want the corporate team to participate in a different bonus structure than everybody else. We want everybody to have some kind of participation. So, you know, if the company does well, we all will do well. So here you are sharing in profitability, and you're also sharing in the agony with the principals, the decision makers in an organization, and that says volumes about a company. So when you see an ESOP, you understand employee owned organizations, you understand that they have skin in the game. But when you have a company where people aren't owners but they are being treated as such, it also makes a difference.
Yeah, I don't want to I want to clear that up. When I was referring to ESOPs and employee stock owned plans, that's a very specific thing.
Right.
But some of those, our study was into profit sharing, like you mentioned, Mark, and any form of what you call employee ownership, and what you described is a form of employee ownership.
Right.
It's when, in that example, that's the owner or the majority company owner saying, "I'm not going to take a salary," and technically they're not giving you money, but they're allowing you to maintain your own income security by giving up some, and that is absolutely employee ownership. That is bringing some. So I applaud your company owners, like you said, HP Hotels that eventually you merged with Rain's company. So shout out to Rain's company. Shout out to Kerry Ranson. And he's who I got to know quite well during that pandemic time either too. So, I love it. And that's what we're doing here. Okay. So we're recognizing companies and people who move. And you moved me to chills, Mark, by sharing that, because that means a lot to me personally, but it also means a lot to tens of thousands of people out there, gives them hope, and says like, wow, there's companies out there like that. So if you are in a situation in the hospitality industry, can't give a better recommendation than what Mark is saying for me to say, give Mark a shout. And if you want to get a hold of him, you can reach out to me, and I'll make sure that I put you in touch with Mark and his company. So, Mark, I got some questions here that I'm not really going to read, but I generally speaking, for our millions of fans out there, when your title is Senior Vice President of People and Culture with Rain's company, right? So you have hotels under management and ownership and development. We call you a full service hotel and hospitality company.
We are.
You guys even have a golf course. I mean,
We
I
do.
was reading up on, and I was watching an interview with Mr. Rains, the, I guess, president owner. And it's when people think hotels or hospitality, I mean, it's service. And I think it's the coolest thing. So, what does that mean, people and culture, as far as your role there at the company? What does that mean to you? What does it mean to the company?
You know what, Adam, that's a great question. We decided to take the HR functions in a different direction about a year and a half ago. And what we really wanted to do, and I give Kerry and Jason Labarge a lot of credit for this thought process, but what we came up with was, hey, we want to really show engagement to our teams. We want to translate, one person's successes or several different people's successes at the property levels to the entire company. HR functions by default are pretty mundane for the most part, right? Benefits administration, unemployment claims, workers' comp claims, et cetera. It's a lot of paperwork, and it takes a strain on a company, potentially on a department, for somebody to just only do those things. So we said, can we partner with an organization that can help alleviate some of that? And we did. There's a company that we're working with is called Adams Keegan. I can't say enough good things about them. They do payroll, and they're an HR partner with us. We said, hey, can you help us eliminate some of the tasks so that we can get out to the field, we can share our stories, we can listen to our teams, we can engage with them, we can take feedback, and then we can hopefully translate that into a better culture at the property levels. And that's where we came up with the role of people and culture. So we didn't just want to do HR functionality, although that's a lot of what I do. We wanted to be able to share what we envision and what we do at the corporate level to everybody in the organization, and that's where we come up with it. It's, why was I selected for it? It must be the jacket that I'm wearing in that picture, I think. One of the things that differentiates me from a lot of people in our industry is where my background was. And in our industry, we are the most diverse industry out there, I believe, truly. Um, Most of us that grew up in this business or started working in this business came from something else. We didn't study hospitality. Hospitality as an education was very limited for, small schools or very select schools, et cetera. So not a lot of people knew that you could study this, right? So a lot of us worked as bell staff, or we worked as front desk, we worked in the kitchens, we worked in housekeeping. And just over time, we've worked our way up into different roles. Well, my background, I was actually a firefighter in the United States Army, right? So I had nothing to do with hospitality. I kind of fell into it when I got out of the Army, and I'm still in it. I've been loving it for, let's just say, a long time. I don't want to put my age out there. But one of the things that I've always done, and it says, what is your why? One of the things I've always done is I've always taken care of other people, right? I've always done it for others. And whether it's taking care of somebody that was in a vehicle accident, or whether it was taking care of a guest who was on their wedding night and they wanted to have a special, festivities at one of our properties. It was always taking care of somebody. And then I figured out in the leadership aspect of the roles that I started working in was, hey, I'm not only taking care of guests, but I'm taking care of my team. And by taking care of my team, I'm giving back. I'm doing something for somebody else, right? So it's been a great career so far. It really has allowed me to do what I do best, which is, again, taking care of somebody else, helping somebody else, doing something for somebody else, just being there for somebody else. And I believe that's one of the reasons why, I was asked to take on this responsibility. And I'm thrilled. I'm honored to be in this role. I'm thrilled to be in this role. There's so much that we're doing right now. I can probably talk for another hour about it.
Yeah,
but
Mark,
it's truly an honor for it.
It really is, and it's these the conversations that happen, call it in the boardroom, or at the higher levels of ownership and management. These are the conversations that a lot of times are had, and like, oh, how do we do this, and how do we get how do we move this number up, whether it be revenue or profits or even employee engagement. um, to recognize the culture of your company. You took the conversation to the next step, which is, hey, let's have a conversation with Mark, right? Look at his background: firefighter, U.S. Army, hotel manager, and helping people. And I have applied for human resources directors roles before, right? And on paper, it looks like a hotel general manager is a lot like a human resources manager, a human
Truly.
resources director.
Absolutely.
And it was always very, I never got hired for one. I mean, but I was like, man, I can do it. I can be a trainer. Do you, when you made that transition, I mean, I want to have a whole episode and talk about your transition from being in the U.S. Army firefighter, saving lives, and what you're still doing, and now what you're doing now. I just think that's amazing. But going from operations, call it, to human resources, are there any certifications or more education that you thought that you needed in order to make that transition?
Adam, I was never really a fond collegiate student. My college experience was different, right? I went to the military. I did get my associates. I did get my bachelor's when I was finishing up my military career. And then I decided, you know what, I'm done. And I didn't think I needed to do any more schooling. I thought I was good. Fell into this career. I loved it. And I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm learning as I'm going. I don't need to study any hospitality. I'm just doing it. And a couple of years ago during COVID, I was fortunate enough to get accepted to the University of Miami for my master's. And so I was able to obtain my master's degree during COVID. Again, education, right? So I am learning something 25 years after I had graduated from my bachelor's degree, and it was a great experience. I learned a lot. When I was thrown into this role, not thrown into, when I was fortunate enough to land into this role, I said, okay, what else can I do to learn more? Because as you just said, we do a lot of HR functions in our industry. We wear multiple hats, and I've learned a lot of the HR functionality over the years. But I decided let me go back to my alma mater. So I researched University of Miami, and there's a program. It's a certificate program that's about 10 months long, and it's HR related, right? So it's a specific HR certificate program. I'm currently enrolled in it. I should finish the program before the end of the year if all goes well, and continuing my education. So I'm learning a little bit more of the legal aspect. I'm learning a little bit more in-depth HR functionality roles, so that I can utilize that, when I'm in the field, when I'm engaged with our team members. I have a little bit more knowledge now, and I'm, continuing on my education. So when people tell you, and this is to everybody, when people tell you education never ends, I never believed that. I thought, okay, I'm good, I'm done, but it truly never ends. And it's an ego killer sometimes to realize that you don't know anything, right? But it's eye opening, and it's rewarding to continue to learn.
You're quite amazing with your story, and we need to go deeper with you, Mark, and your history and the people that you know and that have helped you through it. I want to ask you about a scenario if somebody is, let's say, a hotel general manager and responsible for, a team of employees, yet doesn't have some of the hard knowledge of HR compliance, like some of the classes and certifications that you're going through right now. Is there any particular resource besides SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management is one that's nationwide? If they're in a bit of a rut, and as a hotel GM, yet they are good and they care a lot about people, human resources functions are extremely important. And I'm a little bit concerned for the future of the industry, the numbers that we're looking at, right? If we're going to go from 23 million people today, 50 million people in the accommodations and food service, that's a lot of managers. That's a lot of decisions that are made, so that if somebody might not have the knowledge as a new manager to know how to answer this question, like, hey, I'm getting married in a few months. What are my options with PTO? Or I had a loved one pass away. Is there a bereavement clause? Like, how does that work? Or I just want to have my voice heard. How can I share some of the negative feelings that I'm having? Like, because I'm going through some stuff right now.
Yeah.
If a manager is not really aware of how to navigate that, bad things can happen. Maybe there's a decision that's not made or a conversation that's not had. So I know you're learning. You've learned, that as you have grown in the industry and with your own education. But
Adam, I got to tell you, one of the worst things that happened to our industry was COVID, and the reason why is because people that were seasoned, tenured managers, junior managers, and team members left our industry, and that knowledge that is normally transferred from one manager to the next as the next manager is being mentored into their next role, that knowledge has been dissipated, right? So now what are people doing is either they're just playing it by ear, they're getting on the internet and doing searches, which sometimes the internet may not give you the best information. They're relying on other friends and colleagues, and they're not really getting institutional knowledge, which is a travesty for our organization, our industry, when you have people that are 10, 15, 20-year veterans that have this type of knowledge not able to share that anymore. And the younger generation of hoteliers are looking for that guidance, or should be looking for that guidance. If they don't even know they should be looking for it, that's an even bigger problem. So organizations like yours, Adam, that has a voice, I think it's critical to be able to get this out there, to talk with our team members, again, seasoned managers, junior managers, everything, because the risks that are involved for organizations for having HR decisions made by people that don't fully understand what the ramifications are huge, right? So even something as simple as an interview, we've all interviewed people for years, and we know there's certain questions that legally you cannot ask. But if that institutional knowledge has not been shared with somebody, someone may make a mistake and start off the hiring process incorrectly, which now becomes a problem down the line potentially. So, the travesty of institutional knowledge being gone, I wish it would have never happened. So now what we have to do is we have to utilize platforms like yours. We have to get the word out. We have to continue to train. We have to continue to educate, and we have to continue to provide mentorship opportunities. Otherwise, how else can we get that information out there?
Thanks for that encouragement, Mark. That is what we're doing, and that's why we're doing it. You could say that we're in the education field, but we're not a school. But and when we could say that, oh, we're in the mentorship field or we're in the knowledge sharing field, it really is identifying, and more groups are doing this, of course. And I want to multiply the amount of people and individuals that are actually doing things like this, because there is if there's a what you just described as a knowledge gap, with people leaving and all that knowledge leaving, that in itself is another episode, Mark. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is a visual ditch that needs to be filled.
Yeah.
And it's still a ditch. Like, it's not being filled. It's being filled with human beings, getting jobs, and that's a good thing. But the knowledge, institutional knowledge, as you describe it, is it's a very long-term concern, and profitability is revenues. Those are very short-term concerns, and so that's what we're trying to work on. So thanks for that encouragement, Mark. And it's conversations like this that I think can help not only ourselves and my team, your team, my brother Matt, but we have Evelyn here that is the LinkedIn user. She said, "It's me. It's Evelyn." We've all seen Evelyn. Evelyn was on episode 2. I will tell you that, Mark, if your family, and bro, your family, so is Evelyn. She's a powerful, empowering leader in hospitality. And I've learned a lot from her, and it's conversations with her, even just like this, Mark, that are so valuable. So
I got to jump to the next meeting. You guys keep going. This is great. Mark, it's so great to see you.
It's good to see you, Matt. Sounds good. Take care.
Conversation going.
Thanks, bro. Love you.
Love you.
So, Mark, we can wrap up. Anything? We're both in the hospitality service industry. Is there anything that I can do to serve you? Anything that
you know what, Adam, what you're doing, again, what I just told you is exactly what we need. We need more voices. We need to share the fact that hospitality is a great industry to be a part of. It's an amazing career. You can do anything you want in this industry. If you want to work in accounting, or you want to work in finance, or you want to work in HR, or sales, or operations, there's so many ancillary parts of our business that people don't even think about, right? So we have to really get the word out. Hospitality to most people isn't sexy, right? It's not a cool thing. It's not the professional athlete route. It's not the medical or lawyer route. But you can fiscally do exceptionally well, right? A lot of people do extremely well for themselves in our industry. You can have a great travel career. You can do so much, but we don't get that word out, right? The unfortunate part is it's not marketed enough. It's not told enough. And you have the numbers, Adam. 23 million. It's staggering, the amount of people that actually work in this business. And people do rotate. Obviously, some people are working their way through school and then they go into different careers, but they still have a thumbprint in our industry. And the only way that we can keep that thumbprint going and activated is by people like you that have a voice, that want to share that voice, that bring, you know, others onto their platform and want to have conversations about it, and, you know, have serious conversations, sometimes difficult conversations, but it has to happen, right? You know, we are fortunate enough to have technology at our fingertips now, and hopefully that reach keeps getting out there. So what, you know, what you can do for me is just keep doing what you're doing, and you know, hopefully we can keep supporting each other, and we can keep growing your platform so that we can share that voice.
Done deal. That's what we're gonna do. And like I said at the beginning of the show, there, my brother pushed me into the deep end of this, you know, public pool that we'll call it. Of
That's how you learn to swim.
that's how you learn to swim. And this at the start, I'm still very uncomfortable doing this, but mainly because I'm a people person. I'd rather be in person, you know, and I
Sure,
don't.
sure.
Um, I think that I've been more effective in person, but at the same time, the, it's using the same transferable skill that we learned in this industry and even before the industry, which is taking some sort of curiosity, right? And I initially entered the industry because and stayed in the industry because of I am infinitely curious about other people, and particularly people that are not from where I'm from, that are from around the world, whether it be a guest or someone that maybe even someone like Michael Jordan, or someone like a housekeeper, someone like a front
Sure.
desk agent, or a hotel owner versus a hotel manager. Really curious. And so that is what was sexy to me about this industry. And I agree with you. And we are working on some things to offer some reimagining of our industry for younger folks or the emerging workforce, or even those, say, incumbent workers that left the industry to come back, or also the aging population that are over
Yeah.
60, 65 that may have retired, that realized over the years, like, oh, I'm going to live to be 100 because of the life
Right.
expectancy has gone up. So hospitality and hotels and restaurants, they are that knowledge. Oh my God, it's just invaluable. And so with technology, as you're saying, we're trying to share that knowledge around the world. And so, yeah, thank you so much, Mark, for spending the time. We know how busy you are, and so we're going to have you on here again, and we're going to keep on going. And I promise that we will. We will stay consistent.
I'd love to be on with Evelyn at one point. You know, she was
Good.
dynamic, and a couple of other your guests. Hey, Adam, anytime you want me to come on, just let me know. I'm happy to join. You know, we all support each other, and we all have the same vision. So it's really important to keep that momentum.
It's a really good idea for a for an episode to bring in some say operators, you know, and to, you know, whether it be human resources or a front desk person. So give some thought to maybe someone that you want to bring along with you, and we'll
Sure.
make that happen. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Man, well, thank you very much, Mark, again, and give my best to your team and those that we have mutual relationships with. Thanks for allowing us to steal you for an hour and 8 minutes. You know, so this was really good, man, to see you. It's been a while since I've seen your beautiful face, man. So keep on smiling, and
I don't
thanks
know
for
about
sharing
that,
everything.
but I appreciate the kind words, man. It's always a pleasure to be around you.
Thanks,
I
man.
love what you do. You're an amazing human being. I thank you so much for everything that you've done and the things that you'll continue to do.
It's really nice of you. Thank you, Mark, very much, and thank you everybody for watching and listening. And we'll see you again next week, Thursday at 3. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, bud.